and there are some cloud providers that enable uh, us or offer us a service that can manage for us the master node, because as you know that the master node is the brain of the cluster. So if the master node is break down, then we will not be able to interact with cluster. You can create a pod using the static pod that is created by the kubelet on the worker node. But to interact with the cluster, or to create a replica set, or to create deployment, you cannot do that via the kubelet or the static pod. The static pods enable you only to create a pod, but to create a replica set, stateful sets, you have to use, or you need, a master node. So the master node is everything in your Kubernetes cluster. So either Azure or Google or AWS manage that master node for you. So now what I have to do is to install the kubectl. So I have already that. So you will need only to go to my readme file, and you'll find all the instructions to install. Everything is very explained. All what you need is to copy and to paste and to focus on my videos and to finish them until the end. And do not start a video before another one, because every video is linked with the other one, and I have arranged them from one till the end, or till the last video. So go step by step. I have covered everything and explained everything, and if anything still vague for you and not clear, you can let me a comment and they will create a video for that. I am making this video not only for beginners but for everyone, and I like to cover many things, or cover a real project's time, so everyone can understand what I'm going, or what I am doing it, because I don't like to record a video for something that is everyone knows, or something that is very simple, but I like to cover huge things and real problems, because this lab it is a real time problem. For example, we assume that your company have its own data center, and it is tried to immigrate to AWS, and then create another account in Azure, and want to create this connection between all its resource, either in AWS, Azure, or its own corporate data center. So I will copy this and paste it on the admin host. So I will install only the kubectl, because this is the only one that I need to interact with my cluster. So I will pause the video until the installation finish, and they come back. So the installation is finished. I type kubectl -- version. Let's work. Now if I try to interact with my master node, yes, I'm able to interact with. But how this works? How can this work? Because you must always be curious how things are working. Once you start to be curious on how things working, you will dive into all the details. And once you start to dive into all the details, then you will end up with a huge knowledge and you will discover more knowledge. So always, always, I ask you, I ask you to be curious and to ask many questions if you want to go so far. So how these things work under the hood? Let me come to Figma and explain you how that works. So once you type kubectl, any commands or any option to it, git node, git pods, this kubectl go under home, Ubuntu, cube, and look for this file, right? If you still remember that once we created this folder, there was only this file. But once we type this command, a cache folder created for us. So this config file has all the information that we need about our cluster. If we try to cut that file, it has this certificate, because to interact with IP server, the IP server always look for this the certificate of the user that or the device that try to interact with, and look for the certificate authority that signed that certificate, because you can sign a certificate by yourself, but Kubernetes look for that certificate and what is the certificate authority that have signed that certificate for you. If it will not well known, it will not allow you to interact with Kubernetes API server. We will see this later when we will reach to the role-based access control. And they will show you how the IP server will deny our request once we will interact with or to interact with another user. So in this config file, there are three stages or three categories, if you like: clusters, the context, and the user. So the cluster define what is the URL or what is the server where my IP server reside and they will be able to interact with. In our case, the server URL is the IP address of our load balancer that we have created earlier using the HE proxy. Then that load balancer will distribute the traffic to the other master nodes. But how does kubectl know that this user likes to interact with this cluster that's called Kubernetes, that is called Kubernetes? Here where the context comes into play. So the context defines what user or what cluster I want a user to interact with it. So I have, in reality, I have three categories. I have, as I told before, the one call it cluster, then